Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode 45 and the final primetime rundown of 2020. This show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC and their newest hit single, Dirty Little Hipster. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 45 of the Primetime Rundown, powered by StreamYard, right here on the Eastern Observer and the I-95 Sports Network, Zingo Channel 198. Alongside my guys, Ian Schraier and Rob DeLuca, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Friday evening. A little pretty cold outside. It was a relatively big snowstorm, winter storm Gale did hit us yesterday, I believe it was. I think it was yesterday. We're all over the place, but Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, it is good to be back here in the hosting chair. Ian Schraier, I can't thank you enough for really helping us through and making sure we were ready to go, episode 44. And you know what? Experiments have been working out. Really good stuff, guys.
No, I appreciate that, Joey, and I can't thank you and Rob enough for wanting me to be in the host chair. It's really just been an absolute pleasure. Now I wish I could just get the soreness out of my arms from shoveling quite a bit of snow yesterday. Hopefully it'll be gone by the weekend. Maybe I could throw the ball by Sunday a little better than Daniel Jones or Colt McCoy again.
Rob DeLuca, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, hanging in there. You know, you guys, it's great to be here once again on the Primetime Rundown. Love doing it with you guys. Joey, Ian, can't thank you enough for having me here week after week. And we're one more last show of 2020. And I think I'm with us all when I say thank God, because 2020 needs to get out.
2020 needs to get out so fast, ladies and gentlemen. And for all of those that are watching and have been with us all the way since 2019, we cannot thank you enough. For all of those out there also right now wondering about this show and also about Black Cats NYC, take a peek at their brand new album, Free Cake. It's out now, it's called Free Cake, and it is out on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube, Pandora, and Spotify. Thank you very much to Andrew Giordano for that. Guys, there's been so much going on in the world of sports this past week. And ever since I've been on, the amount of sports that you guys were speaking about last week is, I felt left out, and even though I joined only for a half an hour to kind of bring you some St. John's talk and a little bit of Chicago White Sox stuff, let's get into this now, because this is there has been, I gotta tell you, a rough week in the world of sports, because as a Yankees fan, I'm pretty sad and I'm pretty pissed off. Actually, it grinds my gears because the Mets are actually signing good quality players, such as, let's get things started off here with James McCann. Ladies and gentlemen, James McCann signs a 4-year deal worth $40 million, $10 million annually. Pretty good stuff there. And obviously, James McCann wanted that 4th year. The Mets were trying to stick to about 3 years, but that 4th deal was the kicker for the aforementioned McCann. He was an all-star with Chicago 2019. 2 years ago, he had a career high in hits with 120, 60 RBIs, and a 460 slugging percentage. Ian, I want to start with you here because you're a Mets fan and you've had to deal with mediocrity for much of your life. So, and just to...
Thanks for that, Joey. I appreciate that.
To really make my entrance or re-enter into this primetime rundown scene. Talk about how big this signing is and really the future of the franchise with starting with James McCann.
Well, they needed to sign one of the two big free agent catchers on the market. One was James McCann, and the other one, as we're all waiting for him to sign at this point is JT Realmuto. I like the contract. I know that the Mets and the Angels were the teams that were talking to James McCann the most. I know that McCann did have a want to, or I should say wanted to maybe go back to his roots in Southern California. It's where he's from. So the thought was maybe he would take a more team-friendly deal. But the fact that the Mets got him 4 years, $40 million, they got one of the two best catchers on the free agent market. Even for myself, I wanted Realmuto, but I'm not willing, if I'm in the Mets case here, if I'm in the Mets seats here right now, I don't want to be waiting out the market for Realmuto. What happens if you don't get him? I mean, right now, you don't want to be testing waters that you've already tested with guys like Robinson, Chirinos, and Wilson Ramos. We know how well Ramos worked out last year. Yadi Molina's on the market. He's 38. The Mets needed to go out there and address a position that really has not been addressed for the better part of 15 years. I mean, you look at some of the catchers that have come through the New York Mets organization over the last decade, and you look at names like Rod Barajas and Josh Tolle and Henry Blanco and I'm losing, and Mike Nickius. Like I'm losing track of the number of catchers that have come through this organization since Mike Piazza and even Paul LaDuca. That's who I always refer to. When I say the last real good Mets catcher that you really plugged that hole for them for a few years, and that was LaDuca. He was part of the 06 team that lost to the Cardinals and should have gone to the World Series. But going back to what I was saying about McCann, 4 years, $40 million, $10 million a year. I think that's a perfect number right now. Maybe Mets fans wanted to see it a little lower, maybe somewhere in the 8-9 range. But instead of signing JT Realmuto potentially at $20 million a year, now you're signing McCann at $10 million a year, and that opens $10 million more below the luxury tax that you can go out now and go sign a George Springer or go sign a Trevor Bauer. Like I read an article before the show started tonight about how maybe Ken Rosenthal reported that some scouts and some owners actually believe that maybe the Mets blew it and had the opportunity to go out and get the big prize free agent catcher. Look, if they wanted to spend that $20 million, they would have gone out and overpaid for him. They said at the beginning when Steve Cohen took over this team, we're not going to spend like drunken sailors. There are too many other areas of need. And now because they only spent $10 million on McCann, who was one of the two best free agent catchers on the market, you can't argue that they didn't go get one of the best free agent catchers on the market. Now you can start going to look and plug other holes.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And on top of it, too, as something that I believe you had brought up, Ian, a few weeks ago, was that Ken Rosenthal and a few other writers out there had said that they would, quote, bet the house that they would also get George Springer as well. So you never know. Maybe that hole can be plugged in moving forward, whether it be in center field. There's obviously a hole there. Brandon Nimmo, he's more of a left fielder.
Absolutely.
Right field, we'll see what happens there. McNeil as well. JD Davis, guys along those lines. We'll see what happens really all across the roster. I want to bring in this comment from Brian Morales. First off, I want to say thank you very much, Brian, for watching. And I feel bad for you because Wagner's series was just canceled or postponed, if you will, due to COVID in the NEC for the women's. So we want to bring this in here. And it seems as if Brian Morales says McCann's what the kids say is, I guess he's on the uptrend. So B, I guess on the uptrend. I never heard that. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're eating or drinking over there in Staten Island. I don't know. Good signing. As a Yankees fan, sign Yachty so he teaches Gary how to catch. So you know what? I want to now bring in Rob DeLuca. So you are a Yankees fan, and as you and I have brought up many times, is that there is some, I don't know, let's say discomfort in terms of free agency. There is some discomfort in terms of who the Yankees are going to sign. As Brian Morales just said, that yes, it would be good possibly for the Yankees to sign Yadier Molina. James McCann obviously was the, if you want to say, second biggest signing, as Ian brought up earlier. The big piece, or the big treasure chest, if you will, was JT Realmuto, behind the plate. How do you figure this out in terms of a good Mets signing? And really, hate to say it, but as Ian said earlier, is that, well, Mets fans might not have been happy because they wanted a few $1 million less. How can you even complain? You're a Mets fan. Listen, I have no problem. Listen, there has been mediocrity throughout this franchise for the better part of nearly 20 to 25 years, even longer. So what do you say to that in terms of the McCann signing 4 years, $40 million?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good signing for the Mets. People need to not complain because let's be real. Ian's right. You probably did save about $10 million a year here by not doing Real Muto and now doing McCann instead, who may not be on the same level talent-wise as Real Muto, but he's still up there. He's still a very reliable player. So I think the Mets got a great deal here. And now, as Ian also said, they've got the money to go get something really, really big like they've been looking at, like a George Springer, something like that. To address the rest of Brian's comments here on the Yankees side of things, it actually is not a terrible idea to bring in Yadier Molina as the backup catcher to help Gary Sanchez out. I absolutely agree that this could, if it's cheap enough, why not? Because it does seem like Gary Sanchez could use a little bit of help back there, and I think someone very experienced like Yadier Molina who can step up on the days that Gary needs off and potentially be just that veteran leadership that can propel the Yankees during a playoff run. So this is definitely not a bad idea. It's something that hadn't even crossed my mind until this comment came up. So I actually have to agree here. I think if it's cheap enough, and I really do mean cheap, it has to be because obviously DJ LeMahieu remains priority number one. But why not?
100% why not? I personally believe that would be a fantastic signing, but I digress in terms of the Yankees part. Thank you, Brian, for the comment, and please, as you know, you're always welcome to continue with the comments. Everybody out there, please
say more.
Please love more. Please join the conversation. We would love to answer all of your questions moving forward. I want to piggyback off of what DeLuca said. You know, the James McCann signing, I think for the Mets is absolutely fantastic. As Ian said there, you know, and we said this just a few seconds ago, where you know Mets fans may have wanted a couple $1 million less or whatnot. But listen, with the catchers that Ian just read off. Rod Barajas. I can't believe I'm saying that name because I feel extremely old by hearing that name. Paul LaDuca, Mike Piazza. Since the latter two have been gone, the New York Mets have not had a solid catcher. And they tried. Listen, I have to give the Wilpons credit, Brody Van Wagenen credit when he was still with the organization. They tried to see if they can get a Wilson Ramos on a fairly decent deal to see if he can revitalize his career here in Queens. Unfortunately, that was unable to work. But now that Steve Cohen is in the chair, this deal is absolutely fantastic. And for all Mets fans, please, there is no reason why, none at all, that you should be complaining about $10 million a year. Because your owner is the richest owner in baseball. There is no anything that should be said.
No, I think that when to go back to Brian's comment about saying McCann's on the uptrend, him and Real Muto, I believe, are just about the same age, and look. I'm very excited about the numbers that he had in a short season, but also remember he was in a platooned role with Yasmani Grandal in Chicago, so he didn't see the full season. He had about half the at-bats for the White Sox last year. Granted, he slashed at a career high rate, so there's a lot to look forward to. But I think a big reason why they also brought McCann in is his ability to frame pitches, that he is a tremendous defensive catcher. He's great with working with pitchers, and this is something also that the Mets have been lacking for some time. Wilson Ramos, when they got him, and I think it was at the time, it was like a 2-year, $18 million deal, $9 million a year. They were getting him more for his bat. He wasn't the greatest defensive catcher, and I think last year in the number of games where there was a lot of concerns about his defensive ability, I think it was the game in Philadelphia where he could not get the tag down, where the runner was out by a good 5 or 6 feet and couldn't apply the tag the right way. So for what McCann does is what Ramos can't. McCann can frame the pitch. He can also hit well. So yeah, they're getting a guy on the uptrend, but it's a little bit skewed just because he didn't have as many at bats. In theory, he should do better, though, because he's now going to be doing this over the course of a 162-game season as the team starter who's going to play, 140 games.
Let's not forget 2016, 2017 was one of his best defensive years. And do not forget, he was with the Detroit Tigers before Chicago. 2016, he turned 9 double plays as a catcher. That was ranked first in all of the American League. Also, the following year, 2017, he allowed, as a catcher, 57 stolen bases. As a catcher in the American League, that is fantastic. And also in 2017, ranked number 1 within the aforementioned American League. Also, last year, 2020, within 31 games, he had 21 hits, 15 RBIs, 289 average, 536 slugging percentage, and an 896 on-base percentage. Really good stuff. 2019 was his career high in hits, RBIs, slugging percentage, 120 hits, 60 RBIs, and a 460 slugging percentage when he was also selected to the All-Star game that year in his first year on the south side of Chicago. So really good stuff, I think, for the Mets. And really, now that deal has officially been signed, that has been spoken about for the past few weeks now, trying to get that solidified. And the Mets finally did it. James McCann finally did it. And as we did say in the open, that 4th year was a big deal to McCann to ensure that he would get that. So now, fellas, let's move along here. We've got a lot to discuss moving forward. So now let's bring up the next thing here, which I would say, I don't know, there's so many little things to talk about. So we actually saw a video, right? And for those that are going to be listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and also Google Play, and mind you, also breaking news has just come in here, even though it is not 6:31 yet. This is a personal note for the Primetime Rundown. The Primetime Rundown is officially on iHeartRadio as of 3 minutes ago, due to an email we just received. So really, really good stuff. Essential Wrestling Podcast is also on there. We will formally introduce that as well later on. But back to our normal talking point here. There was some baseball talk with Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez buying the New York Mets for roughly about $2 billion. Well, unfortunately, for A-Rod's sake, Steve Cohen was the one to really leap over him and buy his favorite team. But now there's some talk, fellas, that maybe baseball was not all a part of what Lopez and Rodriguez wanted to do. Take a listen here, and for those watching on video or on streaming platforms, take a peek.
When we looked at the Mets, we looked at it as intellectual property. I think for one, it was a grueling process to do all of this while more efficient. Over 400 Zoom calls just like this, talking about our vision, about what we can do with the Mets. And I thought I put together 5 great partners that all represented the 5 boroughs in New York. We had Mark Laurie from Staten Island. We had Mike from Queens. We had Vinny Viola from Brooklyn. We had me from Washington Heights, and we had Jenny from the block. And we had Jenny as the vitamin water guy. Michael Foley, that's right. He will let you know. And we had Jennifer set up as the one of 30 first general partners, women, to be running the show. And we thought that was a tremendous story. But, with guys like Mark Laurie, we had e-commerce handled really well. We looked at this like a entertainment sports media platform. And we thought baseball was just a small part of it. But through Jennifer, we felt we can drive the music with Live Nation business at Citi Field. With e-commerce, we thought we had Mark Laurie best in class. What he's done with Walmart, we could do the same with the Mets. We then thought that we can energize and turbocharge the network by changing and mixing up programming a little bit, and by even getting better and higher talent. And Vinny Viola is one of the great hedge fund guys, investors, and you mentioned Mike Rapoli with marketing. So baseball was a small part of it. It wasn't everything. And we felt we can buy this for $2.35 and over time make this a $10 or $15 billion holding company, much like the Fenway Group has done over at in Boston.
Okay, so now after hearing that, I have to ask you, Ian Schraier, as a diehard Mets fan, are you extremely happy that owns this team?
Just relieved is probably more the word. I'll tell you this: I'm not very surprised as to all those rumors now as to why A-Rod was planning on keeping Jeff Wilpon if he had won the bid in his current role as COO and running the day-to-day operations of the New York Mets. Why? Because clearly this was not about the on-field product. They were looking as A-Rod, as referring to the video, and for our listeners listening to the audio, was about making them into more of a business conglomerate. Let's look at the positives, okay, of what would have happened if A-Rod and J-Lo would have won the bid. Like Steve Cohen, they're both native New Yorkers. They would only become the second pair of the second minority owners in all of Major League Baseball.
Don't forget Jenny from the block as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you put them together, they become the second and third minority owners in all of Major League Baseball, and that's something that we lack in Major League Baseball, and we want more inclusivity and we want more diversity. But to say, well, when they put in their bid at $2.35 billion and you saw where all the money was coming, it was coming from more than just 5 investors. They had other professional athletes investing a few dollars here and investing a few dollars there to make up their bid. There was names like Brian Urlacher, Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards was talking about investing money. He was tweeting at Mets fans when A-Rod and J-Lo's team didn't win the bid. Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports was another name that was included in that bid. So the scary part of it was that if J-Lo and A-Rod won that bid at $2.35 billion or whatever the number was, I thought the Mets might have really had become what the Marlins were at one point, where they were just going to start liquidating their assets because they really weren't going to be able to afford the Jacob deGroms and the Pete Alonsos and the Jeff McNeils and the Noah Syndergaards, because what were they going to have to do? They were going to have to try and build back up all their revenue because all their revenue went into buying the team. As a result, it seems a little bit like that was their plan. He's talking about J-Lo creating this connection because of her great music career, about creating a connection with Live Nation and creating more concerts at Citi Field. A-Rod working with Mark Laurie with respect to turning the Mets into an e-commerce giant like he's done with Walmart. Do you guys remember when, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but it was while Citi Field, after Citi Field had just been open, when the Mets sold a line of Alyssa Milano Mets wear, and the only way to find where that shop was either you had to be coming up the escalator from the first base side to go up to your seats, because that's the only booth there was for it. It wasn't like the big 7-line area in center field where they have the blue area to sell their apparel.
Right by the escalator heading up to right field.
Right by right field. So if you're like going towards the Pepsi porch, now Coca-Cola corner, that's exactly where it was. So that's all this reminded me of, is that they just wanted to turn it into a moneymaker. It had nothing to do with the on-field product. Baseball was a small part of it. Mets fans, very relieved, for sure.
I want to bring this to Rob DeLuca because, you're a soccer guy, and you look at what the Fenway Sports Group has done and the businesses that they own or that are under the Fenway Sports Group umbrella. The Boston Red Sox is a subsidiary, as well as Liverpool Football Club, Fenway Park, Anfield. Roush Fenway Racing is 50% owned by the Fenway, by John Henry and the Fenway Sports Group. The other half, obviously, by John Roush and the Roush family. The Pawtucket Red Sox, 10%. The Salem Red Sox in whole. Nesson, 80% of Nesson. MGM Music Hall at Fenway, and then also the Fenway Music Company. Well, I want to ask you this, because exactly what Ian Schraier did say in terms of basically selling off parts like the Miami Marlins have done. I don't know if I 100% agree with that, because you have to look at what the Red Sox have done. And the Red Sox, yes, okay, Curse of the Bambino up until 2004. But they've been okay. They've been buying, they've been doing whatever, and they've been putting a lot of assets into the Red Sox. And mind you, they also completely refurbished almost, I would say, 70-80% of Fenway Park. Rob DeLuca, I want to know your thoughts on that, and also kind of piggyback off of what Ian brought up about how it might have failed if A-Rod were to buy the Mets.
Yeah, what the Fenway Group is doing is nothing short of spectacular. Like, sure, the Red Sox were not the most impressive team on the field this past season, but, you have to kind of excuse the whole 60-game season thing. But nonetheless, what they're building is essentially an empire in everything they own. Liverpool is an absolute powerhouse. Anfield is, well, I've never been personally, so I can't personally say it, but I assume it's a very beautiful stadium. That's usually how all top soccer teams in the country of England look.
Yeah.
And then I've been to Fenway Park, and it just looks spectacular. You wouldn't even think that it's 105 years old, whatever it is. It is absolutely beautiful. And then to tail off of Ian, the relief is absolutely the one word that should be used for Mets fans here. This just sound like listening to that clip in full for the first time myself, thinking, oh my God, why on earth would I ever want one of my teams to be owned by this? This sounds terrible. This sounds like it has nothing to baseball was a small part of it. It truly sounded like baseball was no part of it, to be perfectly honest. I thought that this would have been a terrible business venture for the New York Mets. This maybe it helps Citi Field out overall, but what does that do for the Mets? Absolutely, and their fans, it does absolutely nothing. I think that the Mets and their fan base have absolutely been bailed out by Steve Cohen here, because this had disaster written all over it, and I don't think there's any other way to put it, personally.
See, I have to bring up the fact that what the Fenway Sports Group has done, not only with Liverpool, but also with the Boston Red Sox. Listen, they brought, and we actually are, I wanted to bring this up here now, and I know Ian's definitely going to shake his head because him and I were in a disagreement in terms of bringing this up. But Dave Dombrowski single-handedly destroyed the Boston Red Sox. Okay, whether people like it or not, they have to understand. He literally gutted the system in Detroit. He also gutted the system in Boston as well, which is one of the reasons why John Henry and company did not sign, and Chaim Bloom, by the way, who is the current general manager and executive vice president of baseball operations. Let's not forget, Dave Dombrowski gutted that whole system, okay? So I understand where Alex Rodriguez is coming from. Yes, you have to look at the big picture, okay? And the New York Mets is an absolute, they are not worth one of the top, okay, let me rephrase this. They are not one of the biggest or tops in sports in terms of organizational worth or value, okay? Or Forbes value, if you will. It's going to take time to grow that. And why not have someone like your friend, fiance, whatever Jennifer Lopez is, to help grow this thing? Don't forget, he also spoke about Mike Rapoli. We all know, and Rob DeLuca knows exactly who he is because he's a diehard St. John's fan. We'll get to that later on, Johnny's fans. I know you're watching, and we appreciate it, but we'll get to Johnny's later. But Rapoli as well, he is a native New Yorker, and he loves his local teams around here.
Joey,
go ahead.
Joey, let me ask you a question. Based on what, see, for me, and I'm not taking anything away from what the Fenway Sports Group has done, that they've turned themselves certainly into a conglomerate. But when you look at the economics around Fenway Park and what is around Fenway Park and how that entire town just embraces Red Sox baseball and the restaurants and the bars and the entertainment product and everything around it. If A-Rod would have come out and said something along the lines of baseball is very important to us, and I think in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to take everything that surrounds Citi Field and turn it into what is in Boston. And I know that's been a discussion for years, and of saying we need to start this Willets Point reclamation project where and what it's been in discussion with the city now for 3 or 4 years, where the junkyards are finally going to get torn down. They're going to get turned into bars and restaurants and movie theaters and shopping and parking lots and so on and so forth. So my question to you, Joey, is based on what you're telling me, do you think that based on all the information that you've heard so far, that A-Rod would turn, even though Dave Dombrowski was responsible for gutting the Red Sox of what they had, that A-Rod would do the right thing by the Mets and they would eventually achieve the same success that they might achieve under Steve Cohen?
I think it would. No. I did not know that. I did not say. But
no, I know you're not saying that, but my question to you is do you think that A-Rod's heart, even though by him saying baseball was a small part of it, had every intent on making the Mets a winner?
It all depends. And we would see it. Honestly, I don't know. I think it would be more of a business acquisition. And I don't know. I believe he's honestly right in terms of saying that baseball was a small part. Listen, his girlfriend is Jennifer Lopez. The amount of concerts, the amount of money that they could be putting, they could be getting plenty of artists to come and play at Citi Field.
Do you remember? Do you remember when I can't remember how many years ago it was now? It's got to be going about 4 or 5 years now, when the Mets had started that Citi Field post-game concert series that would sell some tickets on Fridays and Saturday nights, because you had Andy Grammer and all these different artists that came to Citi Field, REO Speedwagon, to come and perform a 30-minute post-game concert. I love the idea. But how much of that money is actually, now granted, that might bring money to the group that owns the Mets vis-a-vis the A-Rod group, but how much of that money was actually being reinvested in the franchise?
Clearly nothing, because the Wilpons, because I have to blame the Wilpons here, because they cared more about stuffing their pockets than actually the on-field product.
So you don't think A-Rod wants to do that?
Oh, I can. There is no doubt about it that he wants to do that. Him and J-Lo want to do that. There is no doubt about that he wants to. But I personally believe that he would do a better job, and anyone would do a better job than the Wilpons and Brody Van Wagenen and Omar Minaya and all of the other general managers in the last 15 years, truthfully. I can also see right now, yes, Steve Cohen for sure is the way to go. Yes, Ian, there's no doubt about you as a Mets fan, along with all the other Mets fans out there, humongous sigh of relief. Humongous, because you know what? After hearing what Alex Rodriguez did say, you have to look at what's going on with the Fenway Sports Group. Yes, okay, they did not re-sign Mookie Betts because they said that they did not only not have that money, but this was right as the pandemic started, which is when they traded away Mookie to Los Angeles and then signed him to that massive contract. Well, you kind of have to start. And you know what? I want to say also that when this pandemic begins to, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we see what Chaim Bloom does in terms of trading away assets or potentially rebuilding the Boston Red Sox, and seeing what John Henry basically signs off on, I will have a better answer for you to say with Alex Rodriguez and say, okay, well, maybe he meant this. Maybe he had, or maybe, who knows, maybe he could have spoken to John Henry and said, all right, well, you know what? As we're looking to buying this and possibly making a brand new group similar to your Fenway Sports Group, what could we do that is similar or might mirror it or whatever? Because again, all of these subsidiaries that Fenway Sports Group has, as Rob DeLuca alluded to earlier, Liverpool is a powerhouse. And is the 7th largest building or stadium, football, soccer in America, stadium in all of England. And Roush Fenway in NASCAR does a pretty damn good job too. So
look, we'll never know because A-Rod and J-Lo's group didn't win the bid. We'll never know how he intended on allocating his funds in terms of when he bought the team, or if he bought the team, how he planned on allocating those funds. But I think right now, to compare what Fenway Sports Group has become to saying that maybe the Mets missed out on their chance to making more money, I think right now is just an unfair comparison.
It's fair. That is fair. But all I'm saying is that if Alex Rodriguez had that vision that John Henry has, there is no doubt about, especially with the connections and also with Jennifer Lopez being alongside him and the people that he named as well, there is no reason why there can't be another Fenway Sports Group and then him potentially owning a soccer team overseas, or who knows, maybe owning a team here stateside. Listen, David Villa did it with Queensboro FC,
Yep.
new USL championship team. I don't know. He's a part of that. He's a part of that group. Who knows what the deal is here? Brian Morales, again, we cannot thank you. I know you're watching us from Brooklyn, so let us read this here. So correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't J-Lo have a minority stake in the Dolphins when then husband Mark Anthony? And wasn't it a similar idea that A-Rod had about bringing music and entertainment since the stadium was Hard Rock Stadium? As a baseball fan, I'm happy the Mets got a guy who isn't going to hurt them. Yeah, I won't backtrack on my comments, but Brian Morales is right there, because I do remember that when it was Hard Rock Stadium, or actually it is Hard Rock Stadium now. It is. And with Mark Anthony, don't forget those two, when they were married, they lived not too far away from here, out in Brookville. First DeLuca and then Ian Schraier to conclude this topic here, as it is 36 minutes past the top of the hour. Rob DeLuca, let's conclude this. The thoughts with this here and what Brian Morales had to say about the minority stake here.
That is definitely, almost kind of a looking for the right word here, but sign of what probably would have happened in terms of how the Mets would have gone down if Jennifer Lopez and A-Rod had the bid and eventually took over the Mets, which, by the way, the real owner of the Mets would have been Jennifer Lopez, considering she has far more money than A-Rod does. So
yes,
she would have been calling a lot of the shots. So it definitely would have been interesting to see, considering I had forgotten about this until, once again, Brian brought it back up about the minority stake in the Dolphins. So
clearly that didn't work out too well.
Once again, the word I have to come back to is relief. Mets, the more any Mets fan watching this, seeing these comments now and hearing us talk, as this goes on, it should clearly state that you should be thrilled more than anything that the Wilpons are gone, and more importantly, that it didn't go to Jennifer Lopez and Alex Rodriguez. That's pretty much all I can wrap up on this segment.
Ian Schraier, your thoughts on your most recent interviewee?
To me, you don't buy a baseball franchise for the purpose and reason of trying to earn. I don't want to say earn money in a different fashion, but to not put those funds and the money that you're making not back into the baseball team. It just feels like a rehashing of everything the Wilpons wanted to do. They went down that avenue of trying to bring in concerts to raise ticket sales. They've tried to do everything they can to try and bring in more money to the seats without actually acquiring players. Like I said, I really wasn't so sure that if A-Rod and J-Lo won the bid that they weren't going to liquidate their assets, because I believe the net worth of A-Lo and J-Rod together was somewhere around $2 billion. So how exactly would they have paid for a player like a James McCann? They would have had to unload somewhere else, right? How would they pay for a player like a George Springer? So to me, I'm just truly relieved that, as Brian had alluded to, I'm happy the Mets got a guy who isn't going to hurt them. He's a lifelong Mets fan. He knows that he bought this team to make the Mets better. The Mets have been the epitome of mediocrity now for 3 decades. And it's just nice to see someone that wants to put money into the team and see the team actually succeed. We can't. I was gonna say we can't hear you, Joey. Are you muted at the moment?
I apologize. So hold on a second. You just said the epitome of mediocrity.
Yes.
I said that earlier, and you had a little
I would never disagree with you if you were telling me that.
But don't make me put my floating screen between the two of yours.
He's really going to Joey. You're really going to question me as to whether or not I felt that the Mets have been better than mediocre. Listen, you know me. I am a realist. I am going to stand by whether the Mets are horrible or great, and it hasn't been anything. It's been anything but great for some time now.
That is true. That is exactly right. Ladies and gentlemen, for those that are watching right now, please join the conversation. Ask us some questions exactly how our good friend Brian Morales is doing right now. We can't thank you enough for joining us. It is 6:40 here on the East Coast. Joey Jarzynka, Ian Schraier to my right. I think I'm pointing that way. Yes, Ian Schraier that way, and Rob DeLuca right below me. There we go. Okay. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Cannot thank you all enough for joining us here on the Eastern Observer, Zingo Channel 198 on the I-95 Sports Network, and also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now, as we just brought up earlier, iHeartRadio as well. Good stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep the conversation moving on here. And I think right now, guys, we're going to conclude this MLB segment with two final things. The Rockies wanted to engage with the Mets on trade talks surrounding Nolan Arenado. I mean, that is, I think he's, I don't know, let's see, one of the best third basemen, if not the best third baseman in all of Major League Baseball. Well, Steve Cohen, go big or go home, as they say, right?
Is that a lead in to me there, Joey?
Yeah, sure. That was a pretty terrible lead in, but hey, listen, it's a lead in.
What is this now? The second offseason, I think, that the Rockies are trying to unload Nolan Arenado. And this was a discussion that actually dates back to last offseason, because when Arenado became available, one of the teams that the Rockies wanted to talk to about trying to trade for Nolan Arenado was the New York Mets. So now that Steve Cohen's money is here, he has no problem agreeing to a trade that would bring a guy with a contract of 8 years and $260 million on it. Look, Nolan Arenado had career low numbers in the shortened 2020 season last year. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. The guy is as impressive a third baseman, and as Joey alluded to, probably the best hitting third baseman in all of the league. The concern for the Mets is the dollars commitment, and I know fans that are watching the show right now that are Mets fans are probably like, Ian, what are you talking about? Steve Cohen is worth $14 billion. What do you mean a money commitment? The Mets still need to stay below that luxury cap threshold. They want to stay. Sandy Alderson has even said it. We want to stay below that luxury cap threshold. You add a contract that adds almost another $30 million to your books. And let's keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that he has an opt-out. Arenado has an opt-out after the 2021 season. So if the Mets decide, even though somehow this trade would be centered around Robinson Cano, which I would do in a second, you're going to devote $10 more million to Nolan Arenado next year, and he might not even stay. The Mets' best bet right now, if you want to trade, and we've spoken about it week upon week on this show, is go get a Francisco Lindor. Because if you trade for a Francisco Lindor, who is an impending free agent, it's very likely a sign and trade, and he's your shortstop for the next 7 to 8 years. Nolan Arenado, you don't know if he's going to like hitting in New York. Right now, he plays 81 games at Coors Field. If he can't hit at Citi Field in the cold weather days of April and September, even though it does get pretty cold in Denver too, he might just decide, I want out. Maybe I'll go to the Yankees. Maybe the Yankees will pay me 8 years, $260 million, and I'll go play for the Yankees and go contend for a championship across town. This is something the Mets got to steer clear from.
Rob DeLuca, right when you come back, we'll bring you into the next topic. Take your time. Take your time. Go do your thing quickly. Yeah, real quick, as we do have audio playback here with that, we'll bring that, or I guess we'll just do that quickly. Rob DeLuca, little bit of health issues with him, so glad he's okay. Just has to run quickly. He'll be back shortly. So it is me and you, Ian. So as we did say, we'll keep this train rolling. So you know what? I have to bring that up here, is that he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball, but I think a lot of that has to do with the pure fact also that he plays in Colorado as well. Mm-hmm. And on the road too, he really does hit fantastically. And not only that too, he is, as you brought up, one of the best, if not the best third baseman in all of baseball. How would he do in Citi Field? I think he would do absolutely just fine.
Yeah, I agree.
And especially also because he would also be playing twice or 3 times at Yankee Stadium as well. I'm sure he would absolutely have a field day there as well. And that would also be every year as well in the Subway Series for those that are wondering as well.
There's just other areas, Joey, the Mets have to plug up. Starting pitching help, bullpen help. They need center field desperately. They need to shift Nimmo back into left field, as you had mentioned earlier on in the show. They can't afford, even though, again, he's got the money to afford it, they can't afford right now with the other areas that they have to address. If the Mets were going to win right now, even though, hey, when we start previewing the 2021 Major League Baseball season, perhaps plenty of analysts will say, oh, the Mets will be a playoff team in 2021. I have no doubts if they go out and sign A, B, C, and D. But if they keep themselves committed to just trading for Nolan Arenado when they're not ready to win right now, it's just a mistake. There's too many other areas that need addressing. If you were ready to win now, then Arenado's your play. If you're ready to win right now, spend $20 to $25 million on JT Realmuto. If you're just missing that one piece to plug in right away, the Mets aren't there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And this is something that I had brought up too, right when Steve Cohen was announced as the owner, is that this is a process that will take a long time. And yes, don't get me wrong. The pure fact that he is the owner, Steve Cohen, that he is the owner, it is music to fans' ears that he is literally stripping down, gutting out everything all the way from top to bottom. He has yet to let go of the scouts, which is a personal comfort level in me. But some of the coaching staff is gone. A lot of the front office is gone. He's putting in his own people. Sandy Alderson is coming back for a second tenure here in Queens. So I don't know. I think, you know what? I really do believe exactly what Ian said. They're not there just yet. And also, how much is Arenado going to cost as well? That's another thing.
$35 million.
No. I'm talking about trading assets. How much are they going to have to ship out? There were some talks and some possible trade. What do they call them? I guess. Like little graphics on TV from I think Jim Duquette, possible trade previews or whatnot, and or trade analysis, whatever the names are. And one of which, in both of the trades that were there, I think one was from Andy Martino and the other one was from Jim Duquette, was Robinson Cano was in both of those deals, I guess, to kind of offset the money.
Yes.
And I don't want to say that. I guess that would be that would have to be the first talking point, because that would just be, I guess, one bad contract would have to go back, similar to the way that the New York Mets took on Robinson Cano last year after acquiring Edwin Diaz. Of course, there was no shot that they were going to be able to get Diaz without taking on Cano's large contract. So is that going to happen? Could we see Cano get, dangled in front? I don't see that happening, because it's literally $20 million in dead money. Yeah, probably because he's not going to play ever again. We don't think. I mean, who knows? Maybe will he come back after his second suspension for PEDs? I don't know. And is he really going to be able to play second base in Colorado? I'm going to say probably not. I simply don't see Robinson Cano going back in any deal if that was a possibility. I don't see it happening, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of leverage from the Rockies there. Yes, okay, well, all right, well, if you don't, you don't have to have Arenado then. You don't have to have this. And then the Mets are saying, okay, well, here's this and to offset money, whatever. I think the Rockies have a lot of leverage there, because he's literally $20 million that you would just be paying some random guy, basically. And you fill that second base hole. That I think is the biggest problem to me.
The way it helps the Mets is that the Mets owe Robinson Cano for the 2022 and 23 seasons owe him $24 million. So in theory, if you traded for an Arenado and he decided to stay in New York after 2021, you're in theory for only 2 years on the hook for an additional 11. in theory, on top of what you would have paid the Cano contract. But again, that's still $35 million right now that needs to be allocated elsewhere. They need a Liam Hendricks type, an Alex Colomé type. They need a George Springer. They need a Trevor Bauer, if not and Sandy Alderson and the Mets' new general manager, Jared Porter, have already alluded to they need a 3 or a 4 starter. Right now, they're not expecting Syndergaard back until June. So right now, your 4 and 5 starters are Steven Matz, and we know how that's turned out, and David Peterson, who was a solid 5 starter for this organization. Go out and sign a Masahiro Tanaka. Go out and sign a J.A. Happ to be your 4 starter. I have no issues with that. None. But the Mets have already alluded to it. Those are areas that are necessities right now. The Mets have nobody. I mean, Marcus Stroman, nobody behind Jacob deGrom right now. That $35 million needs to be allocated elsewhere.
Rob DeLuca, to conclude this topic, finish it off.
Look, the New York Mets are just they're the hot spot right now, and with Robinson Cano being off the books this year, it opens up a lot of options. It opens up countless ideas even some Mets fans, even Steve Cohen himself probably didn't think were possible. But $24 million is nothing to sneeze at. So if you can somehow offload that elsewhere, you do it. And if it somehow gets you Nolan Arenado in the process, I really can't understand how any Mets fan would complain about that either, considering, as you said, Joey, he probably is the best third baseman in all of baseball. So it is mind-blowing that of all teams, the Rockies picked that the Mets are right now a prime target to send Arenado to. Why? I mean, I get things can be tight with money, and you gotta pick and choose what you can do as a franchise. But it's tough when he's undoubtedly your best player. I mean, it's always hard to justify moving your best player.
Well, Rob, they're trying to also lock up Trevor Story as well.
That's also true. I was just going to bring up Trevor Story.
Yeah.
So, because it seems like the future is there in Story rather than sticking with Arenado. So it really is tough. You wish you can keep both. Sometimes you can't. We'll see how it plays out. I would love to see something play out just for the fact of something in baseball actually happening. Because outside of before James McCann signed with the Mets, it was dry. It was real dry in the baseball world. So it would be nice to see something unfold. I was hoping the McCann signing would be a domino effect, but we have not seen anything since. So hopefully, maybe now these Arenado rumors can spark something.
Guys, let's keep moving forward here as we are 8 minutes till 7 p.m. here on the East Coast, and we've got our special guest coming at 7:30, Brad Gelber from USA Today Sports, and he is one of the writers for the Bills Wire for the Buffalo Bills. We will be talking about football shortly, and we will be segueing right into Buffalo Bills talk for the remainder of the show. So 52 minutes in, guys. Let's keep moving forward here. We do want to send a congratulations, if you will, to our good friend here, my good friend Anthony Iapoce, Chicago Cubs hitting coach, Major League hitting coach. He returns to Chicago officially as per the Cubs media relations team. Year number 3 on the north side, second under David Ross, the first year that he was in Chicago. He was under Joe Madden before he was let go, fired, whatever we want to call it. He wasn't officially fired, but he was let go. With that being said, in 2018, before Anthony Iapoce arrived, the team had scored 4.67 runs per game, 167 home runs, 761 runs scored, and 722 RBIs. In 2019, with Anthony Iapoce, 5.02 runs per game, 256 home runs, 814 runs, 783 RBIs, and also an increase in slugging percentage, 410 to 452. So all positives on the north side of Chicago, and a good friend to us here at the Eastern Observer, my good friend Anthony Iapoce. Congratulations on returning for a 3rd season to Chicago. Guys, we'll make this one quick here. Bob Nightingale says MLB owners want want the season to be postponed until most likely May 1st due to a possible, I guess, where all players would be receiving COVID-19 vaccinations.
Mhm.
The NHL was talking about obtaining or buying their own set of vaccines as well. I'm guessing MLB wants to do the same. And MLB, the Players Association, they're pushing for, quote, the fullest schedule possible, which would be 162 total games. Again, guys, make this one quick. It's what would you say in terms of, I would say that this is a no-brainer in my opinion if Major League Baseball can afford it.
Well, owners want to do the right thing, and they don't want to get caught. They don't want to be caught on the wrong end of this. We already saw what happened with Justin Turner. That the owners want the players, they want the team personnel vaccinated, and as a result, what that would do by pushing the start of the season to May 1st, it would delay and allow for the time for fans also to be vaccinated, and as a result, a possible return to ticket sales and a return to profitability, where teams right now are hemorrhaging money. They're losing dollars, millions of dollars by the hour. But the Players Association feels that these stipulations are already in place. They had a 2020 season. They were able to get through it. Granted, it started off horribly. The Miami Marlins didn't play their first after opening day, missed 2 or 3 weeks because their entire team became infected with COVID-19, and they had to accept a third of their salary rate. So they want to get paid their full salary rate. They're ready to play a 162 game season. The collective bargaining agreement stipulates that right now that a 162 game season must be played in 2021. It has nothing to do with the vaccinations. Everyone wants to get out on the field. Everyone wants to be healthy and do this thing right. In the end, it's going to come down to dollars and cents, as it did last year. And unfortunately, it's going to bring the two sides again into a lengthy negotiation as to how many games are going to be played, how the playoff system is going to be reinvented, whether or not the DH is going to come back. It's just going to create the same whirlwind that we saw, 10 months ago?
Rob DeLuca.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. This has nothing to do with COVID or the vaccination. This is all about getting fans back in the stands. That's what the delay is for. So, I guess in part it is the COVID-19 and its vaccination, because they want everyone to get it, and they feel that by getting it, they could have fans in the stands. But that's really what this is. They feel by pushing the start time back, they can compensate the money lost in that time by having ticket sales, fans in the stands, because they feel people will probably pay, and I believe it, will pay top dollar to get their butts back in the seats and be watching a game in person. No question about it. So that's where the league stands on this. They know that they can get fans, but if they can get fans back in the stands, the money will be compensated. And I agree that it would, but I don't agree with the idea of actually pushing it back. I agree that with the players here that 162 games absolutely need to be played this season. No questions asked. Start with no fans. Look, because here's the thing. We are eventually going to get to the point where fans will be allowed in the stands in 2021. And I say that with a guarantee, especially in a sport like baseball, where almost every park is outside. So it's a lot more air circulation. I absolutely agree. Baseball will have fans in 2021, but start without them. Just get started.
You just opened up a can of worms, and I do not want to continue because we've got so much to talk about. So we got those two opinions there, guys. Let's keep moving forward here. Unfortunately, Henrik Lundqvist, Capitals goaltender. Yes, I said those words. Ian is about to cry. Capitals goaltender Henrik Lundqvist will not suit up for the Caps this season due to a heart condition. He posted this on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter as well. Really sad state of affairs, guys, because Henrik Lundqvist is really by far, listen, as an Islanders fan, I can't stand him because he's so good. But towards the latter part of his Rangers career, the Islanders owned him big time. But again, really the heart and the competition, the competitiveness that he has, will. Again, I don't want to say that he's never going to come back, but with a heart condition I would rather live my life than play hockey. That's just me. Ian, your thoughts as a lifelong Rangers fan and someone who has been rooting for Henrik Lundqvist for the better part of 20 years.
Well, thankfully, it doesn't appear to be life-threatening, and we don't appear to have any more details than that. We know he's okay, as far as we know. And really, did this deserve to happen to anyone? I mean, no, especially not him. And I hope it's not COVID related. I know we're hearing a lot of, and granted, we didn't hear of any positive COVID case related to Henrik Lundqvist, but I know that one of the long-term effects of COVID is what's called myocarditis, which is a heart condition that could physically stop your heart. So hopefully that isn't the case here with Hank. But I think at this point, retirement feels inevitable. I hope I'm wrong. I hope a team decides, at 40 years old to give him one more year and let him have one last run. I'm not so sure that the Capitals are going to let it be them, even at a team-friendly deal. But granted, it's not life-threatening, and I just hope the best for him and his family, and hope everything's going to be going well. I did have to add to Joey's point about him being the Islander fan that he is, and I'm going to have Rob kind of team up with me on this, because he really wanted to make sure he twisted on such bad news that he just twisted the knife just a little bit. And I'm just trying to figure, Rob. When was the last time that the New York Islanders had a franchise goaltender? I don't know how many years they've been waiting for.
I don't know.
I think Rick DiPietro might fall in that conversation. I don't know.
I don't know. What's 10 years?
Islanders fans watching right now, please back me up here. Comment, help me, everybody.
There's nothing to back you up on that.
I don't know.
One of us has had Lundqvist. One of us has had the greatest goaltender to ever play the game.
Listen,
and then the other one of us traded Roberto Luongo.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. That was Mike Milbury, okay? And Mike Milbury should never be spoken about on this podcast, number one. Number two, the greatest goaltender in my lifetime has been the following: Dwayne Rollison and Wade Dublowitz. Thank you very much, everybody.
He threw those names down like he really meant it, and I respect Joey for that. But
ladies and gentlemen.
No, but Henrik Lundqvist, I am broken up completely by the news of Lundqvist. Look, I'm a Devils fan.
It's not the way you want to see him go out.
It's not the way I want to see. I was very excited to see him in a Washington Capitals uniform. I wanted to see Henrik Lundqvist get a shot at the Cup. I really hope he comes back next year, wherever it may be, and he's given one more shot. I feel he deserves one more shot. Because aside from Joe Thornton, there's not another player in this league that is deserving of a Stanley Cup more than Henrik Lundqvist. And I really hope. Well, Patrick Marleau too, but he went back to the Sharks. So when is his opportunity ever coming? They went back to the Sharks for the 90th time. So it's hard to say when his opportunity is coming. But for Lundqvist, I wish him the best. I hope he has a very quick and healthy, speedy recovery. And I hope to see him back on the ice in 2021-22 with the contender, chasing that ring. Let's get this future Hall of Famer one ring.
Guys, Ilya Samsonov is the projected starter, okay? He was the projected starter even before Henrik Lundqvist announced his terrible news. But now that Hank is not there this year, do they go in-house and bring up Phoenix Copley, who the last time he's played in an NHL game was 2018-19 with the aforementioned Capitals? Or do they sign a player, or do they sign an outside guy such as the following four? Good Lord help us, Jimmy Howard, who got a grand total of 2 wins, 23 losses, 2 ties last year with Detroit. So that's really not a fair comparison. The same thing goes with Ryan Miller. 9-6-4 with a 3.10 goals against. Again, not really a fair comparison because he played on Anaheim. And Craig Anderson, good Lord help us, fantastic goaltender, the best goaltender in Ottawa Senators history. 34 games played. He started 31 of those, 11, 17, and 2 with a 3.25 goals against average. And then there's also one guy dangling around on the bottom in Mike Condon. We all know how his career most likely ended, which was an absolute disastrous beginning of 2018-19 when he was let go in a matter of minutes. Again, guys, let's make this a quick one here. Easy answer. Is it Phoenix Copley, or do they go outside? And who is it going to be if you say they're going outside of the organization?
I wouldn't mind seeing a Jimmy Howard come to Washington. First off, I mean, how many starts are they really looking to have a Jimmy Howard make? And let's keep in mind where he's been the last few years. He's been at the bottom of the East in Detroit, where he has no support whatsoever offensively. I think for
to say the least.
to be nice about it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Jimmy Howard's a former Vezina winner. I think if you were asking him to come to Washington, which is trying to make one last run at the Cup, and ask this guy to make 12 to 15 starts, and he has the playoff experience to come in if God forbid Ilya Samsonov got hurt, he could step in and fill in right away. I don't know if I don't think it's out of the question that they could keep it in-house and see how long they could ride Samsonov for, just because of how young he is. But if he gets out to a bad start, and granted he earned his stripes in the playoffs, I don't think going a Jimmy Howard route would be the worst thing at all.
Rob DeLuca.
Yeah, Copley's not the answer if you ask me. I've seen him play. I don't see the capability of an NHL starter at this time. He's still a young kid, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think he's the answer at this time. I do go to the free agency pool, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the other Vezina winner, Ryan Miller. I think Ryan Miller deserves a shot with a really good team, because like you said, Joey, he was in Anaheim. How is that a fair comparison when you've got literally nothing in front of you? And plus, he was backing up in Anaheim. I mean, he'll do the same thing here in Washington, unless Samsonov does not turn out to what he's supposed to be. But I think Ryan Miller still has a little bit left in the tank. Sure, he's up there in age, but with a Capitals team where the window seems to possibly be starting to close on another championship, a guy like Ryan Miller is perfect, because that is exactly what Henrik Lundqvist was. He was the fail-safe in case Samsonov doesn't pan out. And I think Ryan Miller is another perfect fail-safe. So I would think on a team, it'd be very team friendly to get him, and I would love to see him get one more shot. And I'm someone who has a soft spot for the Capitals, and I love Ryan Miller. I think it's a perfect combination.
Guys, let's keep it moving here with a lot of continuous news about retirements or career being over. Alexander Steen, at 36 years old, has called it a career due to the fact of a back injury. St. Louis saves about $5.75 million on the cap once he is set to the long-term injured reserve. He was fourth in St. Louis Blues history in games with 765, fifth in points, 496, sixth in assists with 301, and ninth in goals with 195. He also had a fantastic 2019 Stanley Cup run. He also got a Stanley Cup as well, which is really amazing. And good for the St. Louis Blues, because I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, when we do return to the airwaves, it will be on our NHL preview show, and we will definitely be discussing the St. Louis Blues and how they can use that $4 million in cap space. There is a lot of free agents still out there. There's there's actually one restricted free agent defenseman out there, Vince Dunn, who still needs to be signed out there. So does all $4 million go to him, or does it get split up in a few different ways? We will let you know that in the next few weeks once we get more clarity on the season. Guys, as we continue moving forward here, 8 minutes past the top of the hour, we still got another couple of minutes before our special guest arrives. USA Today's The Bills Wire writer, Bradley Gelber will be joining us here tonight on the Primetime Rundown. Really good stuff here. He will be joining us at 7:30 for Buffalo Bills Talk. Let's keep moving forward as we did say just a few seconds ago. Let's look on our prompt and see what the deal is. Guys, Pierre LaCroix, the architect of the Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup runs 2000-2001, he passed away at the age of 72 due to complications of COVID-19. We wish him and his family, the LaCroix family, the best. Let's not forget, he was also the architect in terms of bringing Patrick Waugh to Colorado from Montreal. Let's not forget that as well. And in both of those years, also obtaining in 2000-2001, He also got Rob Blake as well. Do not forget that.
And kept Joe Sakic from staying from when they moved from Quebec to Colorado. He was a big part of why Sakic stayed.
Yep. So really, really sad. A sad 2020, and exactly what Rob DeLuca brought up earlier. 2020, for the love of God, it is so close to being over. Guys, let's keep moving forward here. And I know I don't want to keep rushing here. And for all of those watching, any comments, join the conversation. Any questions that you all may have for us on the NHL level, NCAA basketball level, wherever it may be, even the NFL level, please give us a couple of questions and we will answer it as soon as we do see the questions pop on our screens. Guys, there's a lot of talk now that the Canadian teams, the 7 Canadian teams, could potentially be playing here in the United States. That is a big deal because we could see all 31 teams playing against one another, or they could be, being put into into a specific division with this alignment deal. We see it now with the Toronto Raptors. They are playing at at Amalie Arena down in Tampa. I got my Florida arenas mixed up there. They're playing in Tampa Bay. They're going to be playing alongside, most likely, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defending Stanley Cup champs. Guys, how's this going to work? Could we see the Canadian teams, and where would they play? Also, that's another thing, too. Where would each team play? I mean, I would say Toronto would probably play in Buffalo. Montreal would probably play in Boston.
That's a disaster.
That's a scary thought.
That's a bad idea.
Any thought of where this could all how this can all pan out? Because the provincial travel, if you will, in each respective province, they do not know. The NHL does not know if they can cross province lines and without a certain quarantine period. Obviously, here in the United States, you can cross state lines and, they say whatever, but who knows if they're actually doing it. Again, another conversation for another day. Here in the United States, you have a lot more freedom to do that as opposed to Canada. Ian, let's start with you. Where would the 7 teams play?
I didn't hear so much about the fact that potentially they would have to quarantine if they came across provinces. I know that NHL executives did have a call, the senior NHL executive called the 7 Canadian teams to discuss about playing south of the border, but just think about the cluster that would create, and with respect to the realignment that came out only a few weeks ago with regards to the all Canadian division and the 3 US divisions. How exactly do you decide, number one, where you're placing all these teams and where exactly they're going? Yeah, in theory, would a Vancouver potentially go to some team in Northern California, like a San Jose or a Denver? Would a Winnipeg and a Calgary end up playing in Minnesota? There's so many geographical questions. And then wouldn't they have to quarantine when they come from north of the border into the country? The Canadian government has not said no in regards to signing off on having each team play in their own city. The Canadian government does prefer what we saw in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year in the return to play. They do prefer the bubble format. They like the idea of having all the teams together, staying in the hotel and trying to stay distant from one another. Over the course of a 56-game season, that's pretty impossible. So I think in some way, shape, or form where hockey is king north of the border, I think that perhaps the Canadian government is going to have to give a little leeway in regards to coming across provinces where teams can stay within their own country and can quarantine how they need to. I just think it's just too many. I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but I just think there's just too many balls in the air in regards to trying to get these teams to come south of the border. It's just creating more headaches, more problems. And I like I said, they haven't signed off on it saying that we won't. There's nothing concrete to suggest that this is definitely going to happen. It's been suggested, but I think in the end that the Canadian government's got to find a way to keep the realignment as it is.
DeLuca.
Yeah, what else is new? Canada causing problems again. What else is new? I'm just kidding. I am just kidding.
Well, we just lost all the rest of our viewers for them.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the one that did it. In all seriousness, it's complicated. It really is complicated, and unfortunately, this did was just create another headache. when Chris Johnston tweeted this out, I was like, oh no, here we go again, another issue. It's like they were so close. January 13th, 56 games. It looked like it was in stone, but then this obstacle that seemed overlooked a couple weeks ago has now come to try and trip everything up. I think it will all get worked out. I personally believe they will stick to January 13th and 56 games. I believe that will happen. And I do believe that the 7 Canadian teams will be playing in Canada with the provincial travel. I believe that will happen. I do believe there will be some leeway there. So I think everything is going to be fine. If it turns out they did have to come to the United States, that just raises a lot of questions. I think you'd have to put a lot on the line here. I think you'd obviously have to have teams sharing arenas, and then obviously the team that doesn't live in that or does not play in that city normally, like you put Toronto and Buffalo.
Yeah. The
Toronto Maple Leafs are probably going to have to stay in hotels in Buffalo for 56 games. That's pretty tough to do. It's also an expense I'm sure the NHL doesn't want to pay, because when you do it for a 3-week bubble, that's one thing, or a 2-month bubble, whatever. You're talking about now a whole 6-month season. That's not exactly something that is cost efficient, nor is it smart, because eventually when you're all in the same place for a long period of time, things can happen. You just don't know. It's a lot of variables, I think. So I do believe that eventually the Canadian government will loosen up a little bit and say the 7 Canadian teams can play in Canada, no fans, and that'll be that.
Yeah, and especially in Canada, you're not going to see any fans. Regardless, 2021, all of 21, you're not going to see fans in Canada. I think here you might have a half a chance.
For that one, Joey, I would say it depends on what state you're playing in.
Right. That is true. Yes, and especially obviously we're starting to see it in Florida right now.
Right.
Florida, there's not plenty of fans, but there's obviously a limit restriction there. I know
the Panthers are used to a small capacity. They're used to it. It'll be like a normal game for them.
Down in Sunrise, that is very true. I have to tell you, I think that it would be an absolute disaster if they were to come down here. And I think that it would be, I think it would cause way too much hectic stuff in my opinion. Also the ice quality as well. I think that would put a lot of pressure on the ice crews and everything along those lines. Don't get me wrong. Listen, they had a bubble, and they had at 1.5 games a day in Toronto and in Edmonton. So they can do 2 games a day. They can. There's no doubt about it. But the problem that I have here is that for it to possibly, I think it's very tough to explain, because the logistics part of this is now, where does Montreal go? Where is the closest spot for Montreal? Where's the closest spot for Toronto? How about Ottawa? We didn't even forget that too. They're right in the middle of all this.
Oh yeah.
So where are they going to go? Would they come down here to Long Island? Would they come down to Manhattan? I doubt it. Would they go, and really, where are there other places? Where are there other places where these Canadian teams can play, especially, again, the likes of Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal? And I'm sure that they would have to play in a building, in a building that really is NHL compliant. They're not going to be playing at the Barclays Center, because we all know how well that worked out.
I think they should all play. I think they should all play at NYCB Live and get that arena out of debt.
That's what I was just going to bring up. Once again, we're talking about hub city. Again, there's a possibility of hub cities, and what's weird enough is Newark, New Jersey, of all places, was brought up. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why that works. Just because I'm a Devils fan, and why the city of Newark, New Jersey would work. One, there's 2 rinks inside of the Prudential Center, so you've got your practice rink and you've got your game rinks right there. So that saves a lot of trouble from, having to clean the ice on one rink that also going to need to play on. That's already solved. The other one will be, okay, look, this is like a hub city. You got to stay in your hotel. players get one look out the window of Newark, New Jersey, and be like, "All right, I'll stay in the hotel." It's that simple. There is nothing pretty to look at in Newark. I promise.
But hold on a second. You forgot to say that the Courtyard Marriott is connected to that.
That's also true. Well, I don't think you could fit 7 teams worth of people into that little hotel. But yes, that is another thing. There's a hotel right there connected. You can put some in there, and then there's some over there.
Rob, go next door. There's a whole lot to do in Harrison, my man.
Columbus, Ohio, Las Vegas, Nevada, Edmonton, Alberta.
Vegas could be bad.
Toronto, well, and the reason why is because right now Ian brought up San Jose. This is the part where we're going to conclude the NHL segment. But San Jose, there's a good chance that they might have to, and most likely will have to relocate out of Alameda County. Why? Because the 49ers are currently playing in Arizona, and where is the backup for San Jose? Vegas. Vegas, baby. Heading out there.
That'll go well. You got a beautiful strip of so many things to do.
Well,
you got to stay in. I don't know about that one.
It's all
stay in the Cosmopolitan. You have direct access to T-Mobile Arena right behind it. You're doing okay.
That's it. And in the meantime, and in between there, whatever, they can go ride the roller coaster in New York. You could do that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep it going here. Also, there was something else too, an acquisition today, and Ian's definitely going to laugh at me after I say this. Anthony Duclair signs a 1-year, $1.7 million deal with the Florida Panthers. Yay. Clap it up to Anthony Duclair.
Hey, it's a signing. Maybe it'll cause a domino effect.
Listen, free agent frenzy here on the Primetime Rundown, ladies and gentlemen. Free agent frenzy. That's exactly what it is. Next, guys, before we were about 9 minutes away until we have our special guest on here. And we cover St. John's. We also cover Seton Hall men's basketball, the Red Storm and the Pirates. And we saw a fantastic game yesterday for the latter for Seton Hall. But we saw an absolute abomination from St. John's. I want to start this one off with Rob DeLuca because you and I are both St. John's fans. Not only that, it's also my alma mater as well. And then I want to get to Ian Schraier on this because St. John's looked absolutely abysmal when last year the defense was their strength and offense really was not the strength. This year, offense is really, it's around the same area, but the defense has been brutal. Let's hear your thoughts.
This game went about as expected as possible. This St. John's team tried. They really did. They were in the game for, let's see, it's a 40-minute game. I would say they were in it for about 15 of those minutes. They really played their hearts out. They had it down to a 2-point game at one point after being down by as many as 16. But that was in the second half. But then they ran out of gas, and Creighton accelerated, and just like that, they went down. And next thing you know, they're down 10. Now they're down 13. Now they're down 20. And then they ended up losing by 18 points. I give them credit for the effort. There was a point where they were on their run, and it was like they're going to stay in this game. But at the end of the day, you were playing the number 9 team in the nation. You were on your own home court, but you didn't have the fan energy, which really does make a difference sometimes. If you had that 2-point game with a full Carnesecca arena, that might have played out differently. But without the energy, it just the better team with the talent and depth is going to take over, and that's exactly what we saw. And Joey, you need to turn your mic on.
And this is and I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, with that there. St. John's gave up 57% from the field to Creighton, 38 for 67. And then their 3-point field goal percentage was 13 for 23 from distance. Brutal is an understatement. Ian Schraier, your thoughts on St. John's?
I'm actually going to give SJU a little bit of credit here. And the reason why is that they were down by as many
What is that?
And I'll tell you why I'm going to give them a little bit of credit, because they were down, as Rob had alluded to, they were down by as many as 16 points in the first half and very easily could have folded up. And at one point, they actually pulled the game within a single basket at 2. And that was
for that comment, that's what you get.
You're not going to let me finish?
Go ahead, continue. I thought
it was something that St. John's, even though that they are allowing the most points per game of any team in the Big East Conference, and I was actually a little surprised to see that, and I'll tell you why. Because I think what they've done reasonably well is when they get into their trap defense and they create a little pressure, they actually create a lot of havoc, especially at half court for some of these teams, even in the front court for some teams. Like, I thought there were points where Creighton was making some lazy passes early in the second half, and that was really all of a start for the most part of what really pulled St. John's back into the game. There were points where in transition where Julian Champagny had open looks in the corner where he knocked down back-to-back threes. And you thought that St. John's at one point, with the home court advantage at Carnesecca, albeit there were no fans there, that they were actually going to keep that a game. So yeah, I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. I thought they had active hands. I thought they were creating pressure. We've seen that a lot this year from St. John's. So that's why I was saying I'm a little surprised to see that they're actually last in the conference in scoring defense. Yes, they have a lot of concerns outside of Julian Champagny offensively.
They don't have an offense. They don't have an offense.
No. I mean, outside of Julian, that's really it. But they, the biggest concern for me was that they just couldn't match up at all in the post. Ryan Kalkbrenner just gave them fits all night. I mean, you had a 7-foot guy in the post right there for Creighton, and there is no height at all there for St. John's. They out-rebounded them 44-28 on the glass. It's probably a different game if that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and again, just by looking at some of the statistics one more time, 13 points from Posh Alexander, 6 from 11 from the field. There was a little bit of there was one part where St. John's was trailing by only 4 points, and Marcellus Earlington was called for a travel. And from that point forward was when it all went downhill. And let's not forget, Marcus Zagorowski had come back onto the court, and St. John's had narrowed its lead to only 6 points. They were unable to get anything going with Marcus Zagorowski off the court, and that was a big problem.
You said that name, Joey, and I got PTSD from last night. I
know the final score.
That kid was unconscious last night.
6 for 7 from distance.
Yes, 20 points, 7 to 10 from the field, 6 to 10 from deep. But I thought that with respect to the game, that I thought that the final score wasn't really a testament to, at certain points defensively, how St. John's played. Yeah, they allowed 94 points. The game was really over with 8 minutes to go, and what was it? It was like a 7-0 run midway through the second half, where Creighton just pulled away and just never looked back. But I like how active St. John's hands are. I mean, they have a must-win game coming up this Sunday night against Georgetown. That's a game they have to win. That St. John's plays so much better at home than they do on the road. They're coming off that brutal loss to Georgetown also, where they were leading by 7 with 2 minutes to go and subsequently lost in overtime. So right now they're on path to the same Big East finish that they might have had last year. So what they can do for themselves by really igniting just a little bit of confidence is by winning this Sunday against Georgetown. It's a must.
Joey, maybe these outsiders like Ian see something we don't. Maybe our bias shields us and just what we've been used to over the last 5 years, because Ian apparently sees some optimism that you and I just don't.
Well, I have to tell you, do I see optimism? Yes, but I think that at this time I will give Mike, and I cannot blame Mike Anderson
No.
because he's only in year number 2.
Yeah, and can you really count last year almost just because of the way it finished up? Really, can you?
Yeah, well, and not only that, also, but their one and only offensive threat is now playing 2,500 miles northwest at Oregon. So, and also Mustafa Heron was here and there, and he was a threat at one point. Unfortunately, his injuries derailed him from his senior season, and thus saying sayonara to the Connecticut native in Heron. But Mike Anderson from last night, quote, "We are still trying to get the blue collar out of our basketball team. Our guys last year, they took pride in their defense. Truth be told, we have got some of the same guys, and we just need to get them all connected. But we also have a few new guys, and all it takes is 1 weak link. And in our case tonight,
it's more than one.
Very, very good. You just actually finished exactly.
You filled in the blank, Ian.
And in our case tonight, it was more than one. But we have just got to keep working at it. Like I said, one of the things our guys were talking about doing was trimming down the field goal percentage of teams. And in the second half, they had a lot of easy opportunities. We have just got to get the mentality where we focus on defense. And that is something that we have to continue to work at, end quote. There is, yes, obviously the thing that I see is, and also the guys down low and the post presence, Isaiah Moore, Josh Roberts, who is completely out of the rotation nowadays, which really is a shame. Okay. Because Josh Roberts last year was one of the top players in all of the Big East in blocks and also on the defensive side of the ball. So let's just say that, yes, it was last year a flash in the pan, guys, or as Ian said, is there room for optimism?
There's room. Look, there's always room for that. There's definitely room for growth. Look, there was, I think, less than 10 games left at least. It looked certain that Mike Anderson's streak of winning seasons was done. And he completely turned it around and saved his streak. It was something I'd never seen before. And then he goes into the Big East tournament, comes out as champions as they were leading against Creighton they were leading against the aforementioned Creighton at halftime, so that by default makes them the winner when the game paused. So they went further than anyone else in the Big East, so they by default were the champions of the Big East.
God.
So there's that, but no, really, my point there is that's the credit Mike Anderson gets. He can turn it around in the snap of a finger, it seems like. So there's still plenty of time in this season. So there's definitely a lot of hope for optimism, especially like next season when these guys are even another year older. They become juniors and seniors.
Upperclassmen, right. Yeah. Guys, let us welcome in our special guest tonight, Brad Gelber. Brad, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you coming on tonight. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, really, really good. So let's give you a proper introduction. You are a writer for USA Today Sports and I guess one of the writers for the Bills Wire as well. Please fill in all the blanks if we forgot anything.
Nope, that's a pretty good introduction for me. So that's my gig. So.
Love it. Great to hear that. And guys, let's start our NFL talk because we wanted to save the best for last with our special guest. And the Buffalo Bills right now, guys, this is a Buffalo Bills team that we have not seen in a very long time. And obviously Buffalo Bills fans that are watching, they know that the last time really they saw this, well, it was 4 consecutive Super Bowl losses, but hey, maybe this year could be different. Maybe the future under Sean McDermott could be different. Also, Brandon Beane as well. He came from Carolina as well. Guys, let's get to this. Bradley Gelber, ladies and gentlemen. Ian Schraier, let's get things started.
Sure. Brad, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on tonight's show. We really appreciate it. First thing I have to ask, Bills are 10-3. I felt like coming into the season that they were the odds-on favorite coming in. Tom Brady's no longer in the division. The Bills finally have that opportunity at their first division title since 1995, and it appears they're on their way this weekend. Did you see 10-3 double-digit wins as a possibility coming into preseason this year?
Yeah, I think we did our record predictions going into the season, the staff, and I think mine was, don't quote me on it, but I think I was at 11-5. So okay. Yeah, I did see double digits. I think that winning the division was, as you said, kind of I don't want to say foregone conclusion because obviously you never know, but certainly was deservedly the favorites, the Bills in this division this season with, Brady gone, Patriots rebuilding a bit. Although, looking at the teams, I think the one that was a little more surprising was the way the Dolphins' season has gone thus far. I think people figured the Patriots would find a way to hang around and maybe be the team kind of nagging the Bills a little bit. Not that they'd be out of it by now, at least from the division standpoint, and that the Dolphins would be the team that was keeping it close. But I believe the odds are 99% at this point that the Bills are going to win the AFC East. If they win tomorrow, it's a wrap there. So yeah, I mean, and obviously the Jets are the Jets. So yeah, I think that people kind of figured that the Bills were going to win the division, but double digits seems like a good point to put them at the going into the year.
So, and Ian, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
But the moment Brad said Jets fan, we have to bring up, and I know Ian and DeLuca saw this. DeLuca knows exactly what I'm talking about. Our good friend Brian Morales, sports information director and director of media relations at Wagner College down in Staten Island. Brad, he has a lifelong Jets question for you because this is fantastic. In light of your guest coming up, and of course, you know me, being a lifelong Jets fan, parentheses, I know, just end the suffering. Are the Bills pretenders or in fact contenders? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard to know until you get there, right? But I think that I would say for sure this team is legitimate. I think that, it's an offense-driven league, and I think that the Bills have shown the ability to really compete on offense. And that's something we've not been able to see, even last season when they made the playoffs, and it seemed like they kind of put it together towards the end of the year. And obviously the couple years prior to that, when they finally broke the playoff drought, those teams were drastically different than they are now with, the big addition of Stephon Diggs that everyone talks about. I'm sure you guys are going to ask me about him, but, with him coming into the fold, in addition to the guys they brought in last year with Cole Beasley, John Brown, some of these young running backs they have on the team, and some of these other pieces around Josh Allen as he just continues to ascend, the offense is legitimate, and that's been the piece that was kind of lacking. Obviously, the defense has taken a bit of a step back from what we're used to in Buffalo. Even in the years where they weren't making the playoffs, they always had a strong defense. That was kind of their bread and butter, especially under Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier. And they're finally starting to put it together these last couple of games. So the first half of the season, it really was reliant totally on the offense. And we're starting to see complementary football, special teams as well. Their young kicker, Tyler Bass, the rookie, has kind of really put it together after struggling early. So finally, we're seeing all three phases kind of come together at the right time. And that's something that's been made a lot of these last couple of weeks is, if you listen to analysts around the country or you hear player interviews, everyone's talking about how the Bills are hitting their stride at the right time. And this is the time of the year where you want to be playing your best football. So I would say they're definitely contenders. I know there's some people who still aren't bought in on Josh Allen, or they're not bought in on this team as legitimate, Super Bowl contenders. But I'd say behind the Chiefs right now, the Bills are really that number 2 team in the AFC. So I think they proved it last week versus the Steelers.
Ian, continue.
Yeah, I think that was perfectly said. I was just going to bring that up and say that whoever's not buying into to Josh Allen is not looking at his numbers. Statistically right now, he's a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League, and I think he has earned every right this year to at least, he probably is not going to win it, but I think he's earned every right to at least be included in the conversation for the NFL MVP award. So my question, and you're right, one of my questions was going to be related towards Stephon Diggs, but my question is more related to Josh Allen. We knew that the Buffalo Bills last year were missing that number 1 wide receiving threat, and they couldn't, and especially last Sunday against the Steelers, it showed how vital of a piece Stephon Diggs is to that offense. Did you see coming into the season that Josh Allen would be, after the fumbling issues that he's had the last couple of years, and granted, he hasn't been surrounded by the weapons that he is right now. Did you expect this kind of top 5 quarterback in the NFL conversation to be surrounding Josh Allen entering the season?
That's a good question. And I think that I certainly expected him to continue to improve. Go kind of the end of last year, I thought he really took some, big steps forward. And there was still a lot of people talking about the accuracy issues and as you said, kind of fumbling tendencies or things of that nature. Maybe people that don't watch him every week or follow him all the time, they kind of, pick the highlights and hone in on those. But I don't know if I thought quite yet he would take this big of a jump. I I don't want to say that you're lying if you said you did see that coming, because maybe there were people who did, but I think that, for him to kind of take this big of a leap, it's been pretty remarkable to watch in this amount of time. I thought maybe, next year, another year, if he had a full season with a guy like Stephon Diggs to develop that chemistry, because let's remember, they didn't have a normal offseason this year. They didn't have the ability to work together throughout the offseason. They had a couple throwing sessions that Josh arranged himself down in Florida, and that was really it for the whole offseason. So for them to be able to do what they've done this year is pretty remarkable given the circumstances. And I think, as I've already said, Josh has really taken these leaps forward. Last year, he really worked on the short game and the intermediate stuff. And this year, it's been connecting that deep ball. That was his big kind of that weakness last year, was his inability to hit the deep ball. And certainly guys that have stepped up. And John Brown's a good example of a guy who came into Buffalo, was kind of pushed into that wide receiver 1 role. He's a borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. If you have him as your wide receiver 2, like they do now, he's one of the best wide receiver 2s in the league. If you have him as your wide receiver 1, he's in that borderline kind of, back end there. So with them sliding Stephon Diggs into that true wide receiver 1 role, given, granted John Brown's missed some time and he's expected to possibly he's out tomorrow again, but he's expected to maybe come back next week. But he's missed some time with injuries this year. So they haven't had their full complement of receivers all year. But when they do, they've talked about this a lot. How are you going to match up with them? Because they have Stephon Diggs, they have, John Brown, they have Cole Beasley, they have a rookie that's been really good in Gabriel Davis, they have their tight ends and Dawson Knox. So there's just a lot of wide receiver weapons, not to mention the running backs too, Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. So to answer your question, I didn't see it maybe taking this big of a leap. I certainly expected him to continue to improve, but it's been pretty remarkable this year.
Rob DeLuca.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Brad. We certainly appreciate having you here. I'm just going to try to go off your answer that the Bills are in fact contenders. Let's say, for all intents and purposes, I know they're not clinched yet, but the Bills would literally have to lose out and then some to not make it. So let's say the season ended right this second. The Bills would be matched up at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Phillip Rivers, very pesky team, also with the Colts. T.Y. Hilton seems to finally be finding his stride again after what was a very, very slow start to the season. What do the Bills have to do to ensure they get past them to start a contending type of run?
Yeah, that's another good question. And I think anything they do that they're good at doing is Sean McDermott makes sure they focus on that opponent that week. So they try never to look ahead. And I think that's a kind of a key thing. Maybe it seems like a no-brainer in the playoffs, but if you're coming in with the hype, maybe the Bills are, and people are talking about a Kansas City Buffalo showdown in the AFC Championship game, that's what people want to see. And I mean, this has been talked about now the last couple of weeks, and we still have 3 weeks left in the regular season. So I think the Bills would need to make sure they don't overlook a team like Indianapolis, especially if they do have their first home game, since 1995, or I believe that's the last time they had a home playoff game. So you're talking like this is you got to focus here. And I think another big part of it is what I already said earlier. I think the defense needs to come to play. I think that, as good as the Bills were early in the season with Josh Allen and this offense, I think that if the defense can play complementary football, take the pressure off of them a little bit, they're a really hard team to match up against on offense, like I already said. But when you have that defensive side, especially with a defensive coach like Sean McDermott, that's what he wants to see, obviously. So I think that then that just makes that offense takes the pressure off. And Josh has talked about it many times. He said when he knows he can go out there, he doesn't have his one of his biggest issues in the past has always been the hero ball tendencies. When he feels like his back's up against the wall and he has to go out and win the game for the Bills, that's when we see some of this reckless play. We saw it in the playoffs last year versus the Texans when, he had that crazy lateral play where everyone was talking about it. Why did he throw the ball behind his back type of thing? That's when Josh is pinned up against the wall because that's just who he is. And it's what makes him so exciting. But part of that progression from this season and taking that step forward has been just taking what the defense gives him. And when he knows he doesn't have to go out and score 30 points, that's when he does go out and score 30 points. So it's kind of a perfect storm, if you will, if the defense can come to play. And I think they've done a really nice job showing they can do that, especially versus a team like the Steelers last week. I thought that was one of their best games of the season this far. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they do down the stretch here, because they have Denver coming up, which, I think is a much better team than their record indicates. I think that, they're very good on the defensive side of the ball. Drew Lock is certainly a young, promising quarterback. And then they're going to go up against the Patriots, which is never an easy game. Obviously, people here in Buffalo know that. In New England, of all places. And then they close out the season versus the Dolphins, which should be a great game. Even if the Bills do have the division locked up by then, Miami could still be fighting for a playoff spot. So they have some tough tests here before they even get to, a first-round matchup versus Indianapolis or another team. And I think Sean McDermott will have them ready when the time comes.
So you bring up the fact, and I don't mean to interrupt Ian and DeLuca here. I just want to ask just a couple of questions here to you, Brad. You look at the defensive side of the ball, and as you brought up earlier, where there was some regression, some not a lot, but some. The team currently right now on defense is ranked 19th overall. But there is one player that you did bring, or actually that you forgot to bring up there, was Noah Fant. And really right now to tight ends, the Bills are lacking in that category in terms of giving up. I think it's about, my notes say 75 total receptions, which is tied for the most in the NFL. How do the Bills stop Noah Fant? Because we've seen him do pretty well again, with Drew Lock at quarterback. And, he just came off of I believe, an illness, the aforementioned Fant. So give us a little bit of a scouting report, if you will, on what the Bills defense has to do to stop Fant.
Yeah, that's a great point. They have struggled quite a bit versus tight ends this year. And some of that has been their linebacking core has been, a little bit banged up at times. Matt Milano, who's one of their best linebackers there, especially in coverage. He's missed time this season, several games with injury. So he's back. He's looking healthier each week. I think that's going to be pivotal with him on the field tomorrow to be able to match up. And Tremaine Edmonds, their, star kind of linebacker there, who's had, when you talk about regression in the defense, Bills fans were really all over him early in the season, that he was not nearly the same linebacker they saw early on in his rookie year. And Leslie Frazier talked a lot about that. Tremaine suffered an injury too, as well, to his shoulder, that even though he came back pretty quickly, he just was not 100%. It didn't really allow him to play the way he normally does. So now that the Bills are getting healthy, that's another, we're talking about the offense playing well, the defense, special teams. Health is another factor, obviously, going into the playoffs. So I think that is going to be a big part of it, is Matt Milano out there to be able to kind of shut down the tight end there. But, it's going to come down to executing as well. And that's something that's been very frustrating with this defense, because they have playmakers on it, but it's the inability to make, tackles in key moments. It's the inability to stop third downs. You can look at third down conversions for the Bills defense. A lot of times they'll get teams in third and long. And it seems like, a majority of the time they're giving up those third and longs, which they've been better at lately. But that's the sort of thing. And then not taking penalties that are going to shoot you in the foot later on. So I do think that we're going to see, Matt Milano tomorrow be a big part of if they're able to slow down Noah Fant.
So now in the beginning of the season, I know a lot of fantasy owners were not too happy with Devin Singletary. And then obviously Zach Moss became the talk of the town in the backfield. So now there was, a little bit of, I think it's again, 22nd in rushing for the Bills. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Thank you, NFL.com. But again, with that being said, to come in with a full or a well-rounded team on offense, again, obviously the offense runs through Josh Allen, but again, you want to go in with you want to go in fully packed, ready to go. But do you see the run game as a little bit of a concern heading into, let's say, most likely wild card week?
Yeah, that's something that has been talked about quite a bit among fans and the media here. It's just that, where is this run, offense, and is it going to develop? Is that going to be a concern? And you got some, media members who kind of look at it like, an older school approach. Like when it's cold weather playoffs, you want to be able to run the ball. And I certainly don't disagree with that, but I'm kind of at the place where I think that the run game is just supplemental to this offense at this point. It has become such a passing league. And maybe contrary to popular belief, you don't need to run the ball to establish the pass. I think sometimes people still have this notion that in order to execute play action or other sorts of passing offense, you need to set up the run, and that's just not really the case. You don't need to. So I think that the Bills have shown this ability to throw all over people because of their weapons that we've already talked about. And I think that as long as the run game can help them. Now look at last week. They weren't running the ball well. They struggled in the first half overall, especially on offense, weren't really able to do much. Josh Allen came alive in the second half. The Bills took over the game and won. But if you look at the end of the game, they had I believe a plus 7 minute drive to close out the game there. And a lot of that had to do with Zach Moss running the ball, Devin Singletary running the ball. So that's when you want the run game to be able to come alive, is when you really need them to run out the clock, things like that. But I'm not super concerned with having them, be a top rushing team. I just don't think it's their identity. And honestly, being in Buffalo for so long, we had to hear about ground and pound for so many years that got us 6 wins, 7 wins, 5 wins, that I'm not too concerned with them, being a ground and pound team. I'm perfectly fine if they want to air it out. And you have to remember too, as you already said, that the offense runs through Josh Allen, and he's probably their biggest rushing weapon they have, even more so than Singletary or Moss. So his ability to get out and run, although he's done it less this season, that's because he's been able to throw the ball all over the field. So certainly come playoff time, if he needs to run, I'm sure he will. But he's said multiple times this year he's perfectly happy to sit in the pocket all day and throw to his super talented receivers. So whatever the defense gives him, he's going to take. And I think that's the right approach to have.
Something I wanted to bring up earlier to you, Brad, I heard you say about John Brown being a, almost like a quiet wide receiver one, or like an almost wide receiver one, and one of the better wide receiver twos in the entire league. I just wanted to say that was fantastically put, because really he's so, he's really not looked at as a wide receiver too. He's always that guy, going back to his Arizona days, where he was always, stuck behind Larry Fitzgerald. He was always, he couldn't get it going. And now here is really great to see his career rejuvenated. One more question for me, Brad. Again, 1991 was the second Super Bowl in a row that the Bills had played in. They lost to Minnesota. Obviously, Ian Schraier knows 1990 was the first year, or was the New York Giants Super Bowl win, as he's a Giants fan. But 27.6 points per game is what this current Bills team is averaging, and that is their best since 1991, when they unfortunately fell in their second consecutive Super Bowl. They went on to go play in 2 more, but a little superstition maybe. 27.6 points per game, that's pretty good. And again, those numbers, they point back to that Super Bowl year. Unfortunately, again, as I said, they did lose, but any high hopes? What are the rest of the media guys saying? What's being said up in Western New York?
Yeah, it's, there's been a ton of talk just,
mentioning the Super Bowl teams and the comparisons. Right now, it's all about Jim Kelly and Josh Allen. And Jim had a funny quote last week that his Jill, his wife, put on Twitter, and it got a bunch of buzz. He said something like, Josh Allen's going to break every record I ever set, or something, when he was watching the Bills game last week. So he's had some pretty, high praise for Josh Allen, rightfully so. And, I think the media guys here and girls here are all kind of on the same page, is that there's just so much excitement about this team. And, perhaps earlier on in the year, there was still some trepidation in terms of, as you guys asked me, is this for real, or is this just a team that's kind of catching people off guard? And when they get, when there's adjustments made, then they'll kind of take a step back. But I think just this being such an offense first league at this point, and having the defense come around, having special teams come around, I think Sean McDermott's one of the best coaches, in the league. I think that people are starting to take notice of, what he's done for this team, and Brandon Beane, as you said, in kind of the intro there, in terms of how they've changed the culture of this team, because for so long it was,
partly that no one believed the Bills would ever be able to shed this notion that they're just a losing franchise. I mean, that's really what it is. I was born in '89. I don't remember the Super Bowl years. I wasn't old enough to appreciate them. So my whole life watching the Bills and then covering the Bills has been nothing but losing pretty much my entire life. So, these last few years to finally have a couple playoff teams has been great. Wild card teams, no one really expected them to do anything. Last year, there was some hope that they'd win a game, and they almost beat the Texans before the collapse. But this year, I'll tell you, it's really, there's belief that this team should, if nothing else, win a playoff game. But I think that's setting the bar too low. I think they really do have a chance to make it to the AFC Championship game. And what happens after that, who knows? I mean, I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat in the NFL right now. And I know there's some national personality saying the Bills are the best team in the NFL right now. If they want to coin them that, sure. But I think that, the Chiefs are still, until they show otherwise, the top team. But I think there's a pretty good consensus here that the Bills should at least be able to make some noise when they make the playoffs. And, it's just very unfortunate. Governor Cuomo today talked about trying to maybe find a way, if there's a responsible, healthy way to do it, to get fans in the stands for a home playoff game. But it's just kind of ironic that the Bills look to be able to host their first home game in all these years, and there's more likely than not no fans will be able to allow to attend. So just a bummer from that aspect. But I'm sure Bills fans would take this season even if they can't be there right now. So.
Well, I'm going to pass this on to Ian Schraier, but one thing that I have to bring up here as a native New Yorker, obviously in downstate New York and Long Island, I can't stand the Jets and the Giants, but I am a native New Yorker where I want to say that the real New York team that plays in the state of New York, I am going to be rooting for, the Buffalo Bills. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Schraier to conclude our segment with Brad Gelber.
And I just want to date myself here a little bit, Brad. And I remember you talking about ground and pound. So that's taking me back to the Rex Ryan days, only so many years ago, where we have to establish the run game in order to create the pass. But I like how Joey had mentioned that in 1991 that he's crediting the Vikings with a Super Bowl that they have not won yet, because the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. So I had to call Joey out on that, because that was actually the Dallas Cowboys that won that Super Bowl. And I'll never forget that Super Bowl. I think I was 6 years old and Joey wasn't alive, and watching Leon Lett showboat it towards the end zone and Don Beebe knocking the football and creating a touchback in a game that was already over.
The Washington football team, ladies and gentlemen, inside the Minnesota's Metrodome. I'm sorry. There we go. Let's keep it moving. I'm sorry. There we go.
In any event, Brad, my last question to you is the number 2 seed for them is certainly achievable for them. They've already beaten the Steelers this year. They're a game back. I think that in terms of strength of schedule and the edge, I think the Bills have the slighter edge, just because the Steelers still have the Colts and the Browns to go. But do you think that, and you said it yourself, that until the Chiefs are dethroned, that no one can really take that title from them just yet? But could you see a way where maybe the Chiefs are upset in the playoffs and somehow the AFC playoffs runs through Western New York?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an interesting thought. It's one of those things where it's hard to picture Patrick Mahomes letting anyone down, and when it comes playoff time, he's just on such another level that it's hard to see that. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. Obviously, anything can happen in the playoffs, and I think the Chiefs have shown tendencies to be able to be beaten this year. There's the groundwork has certainly been laid out for them at times to show that they don't live up to the hype. But I would bet more money on, if I was a betting guy, I would bet more money that they would be the ones hosting the AFC Championship than not. Just because I'm not going to bet against Pat Mahomes. I've seen it too many times not go people's way. But that would certainly be quite the season for Buffalo if the playoffs did run through them in the AFC Championship game.
And Brad and quote me if I'm wrong here, because I don't remember exactly, but was their last home playoff game, the Bills, was that the Frank Reich game?
I think so. Again, I'm your date. I'd have to look it up to
34-7, whatever the score was when the Bills fans were all leaving Orchard Park and they all wanted to get back in.
That was. I've heard nothing but great stories about that game in Buffalo, and it's interesting because my folks, my mom's actually from Long Island, so I have some ties down there.
Oh wow!
My dad's from Canada, so we don't have any local Buffalo connections here. So unlike most people in Buffalo, I don't have the grandpa or the great grandpa that sat outside and watched the Bills all those years ago. So I've had to take my Bills history lessons secondhand. But until now, that's the only positive connotation I've had to the Bills. So
sure.
you take it in where you can. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, USA Today Sports, The Bills Wire, Brad Gelber. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Gelber. Brad, thank you so much for coming on here to the Primetime Rundown and concluding our calendar year with us here tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was a pleasure and, great show, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. We'd love to have you back on one of these days for sure.
Great.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So really good stuff here. We welcome Brad Gelber. Really, really cool stuff there. Fantastic guest also. And just coming up on 8 o'clock, guys. It's been a couple hours here. Crazy stuff, huh?
Great stuff.
Yeah, just can't think about it.
Yeah, well, not only that, guys, I have to apologize to all the viewers out there because Ian, of course, had to throw me under the bus and then kick me while I was under the bus.
Look, you're giving Super Bowls to teams that haven't won one yet.
Well, I know that is true because let's not forget in 2017 they were that close, but then but
you had to drop that in though. I'm sure.
Listen, aren't you so happy that I'm back? Happy that I'm back, right? So as if you're just joining us here, it is 8:01.
Hey, Joey, I'm sorry to interrupt, and Ian, you guys want to break some news to conclude 2020?
Let's do it.
The National Hockey League has a tentative deal on the 56-game season.
Hallelujah!
Hallelujah! That's great news.
Elliot Friedman on Twitter confirming.
That's awesome.
Pierre LeBrun, training camps are scheduled to open January 3rd, although for the 7 non-playoff teams from last summer is December 31st. So a couple of days ahead for those playoff teams. Really, really good stuff. And guys, so going back to what I was saying where Ian, again, threw me under the bus and then kicked me and then got it and then hold on, timeout, and then got into the bus, hit reverse, and then hit drive, and then ran me over again in terms of my notes because I messed up. I apologize for all of you out there listening on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, also basically everywhere else. It was the Washington football team, then known as the Washington Redskins, playing at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome. That's where it was. And the moment I saw Minnesota, I said that. I don't know why. But I did, so I apologize.
Wait, Joey, it was the 91 Super Bowl, the year after they played the Giants?
That's correct, yes.
And they played Washington or they played Dallas?
No, they played Washington. Dallas was the year after.
Oh, okay, all right. So actually, fault on demerit to me for not realizing that was the Mark Rippon team that won the
there you go. Right, exactly. So really good stuff, guys. And I think a fantastic show, a fantastic way to close out 2020.
Yes, sir.
We're almost done here, guys. And I know for those that are watching that wanted some NFL talk, we do apologize. But hey, listen, you just got a half hour of Buffalo Bills talk, okay? We still have some talk to get to, though, and that is our kudos, because we've got some kudos that might include some grinding of our gears. Let us. And I know Ian is extremely, extremely happy, and he is getting ready. For those that are listening, they don't know what I'm doing, but I'm rubbing my hands together.
I'm not sure either exactly what you're doing, but go ahead.
So again, for those that are wondering about the NFL talk, we were going to talk about Carson Wentz. We were going to talk about Daniel Jones, who most likely will not play. He is officially questionable, so he's about 50-50. Jason Garrett to the COVID list. Who might be the NFC first seed, which really we can discuss next week. We'll have a little bit of clarity with New Orleans and Kansas City. Green Bay also plays this weekend as well. Drew Brees is returning. And also, we want to send out our condolences. This is big stuff here. We'll send out our condolences to Lorenzo Taliaferro, who was an ex-running back from Baltimore just a few years ago. And he suddenly passed away due to a heart attack at the age of 28. It has to be, guys, I don't even know. It is so heart-wrenching, 2020. And again, we are so close to being done, and I can't wait for it to be done, because a 28-year-old ex-football player passes away from a heart attack. It really, really stings here. And you look at it, as me and DeLuca are both 25 years old, it hurts. It hurts.
Well, 2 weeks from today, it'll be January 1st, 2021, which can't get here soon enough, but we do hope everybody has a very happy, has had a great finale to their Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy Kwanzaa, and just overall a very happy holidays and a Happy New Year.
Yeah, exactly. And Boxing Day, if you're Canadian, listening in as well, because those Boxing Day deals up in Canada, great stuff. I've been there and I've been a part of those crowds. Wild stuff. So let's conclude our show, guys, with kudos. Ian Schraier, let's start with you.
Well, the first thing I want to do before I get to my kudos is congratulate two people. First, to my colleague here on the show, Rob DeLuca, who had announced to us on the show last week that he had taken a rapid COVID test and it came back positive, but took the PCR and came back negative. Our man, Rob DeLuca, does not have COVID-19, which is a phenomenal thing to hear, and just am so happy to hear that. And hopefully, Rob, you're always staying in good health, and hopefully that continues. My other congratulations go out to a special guest of ours who's been on our show for a couple of weeks now, Larry Pertakowitz, who just received a promotion. He's an attorney, a workers' compensation attorney who received a promotion to partner at Goldberg Segala here on Long Island in Garden City. So congratulations, Larry. My kudos,
Larry.
Yes, indeed. And my kudos actually go out to a former member of the New York City Football Club, Alex Ring. Their holding midfielder for the last 4 years has been traded to the expansion team and one of the expansion teams now in Major League Soccer, the Austin Football Club, Austin FC in Austin, Texas, in exchange for $1.25 million in general allocation money. He will actually get to reunite with the former sporting director of NYCFC, who is now at Austin FC, in Claudio Reyna. Just can't say enough for the job that he did for that franchise, for that club, in regards to helping them get to the MLS playoffs as much as they have. They are not as successful as they are without him in the central midfield role, and just want to wish him the best of luck going forward in Austin. Thank you so much, Alex, for everything you've done for NYCFC.
Rob DeLuca, your kudos.
I mean, look, I don't have much. I didn't think of much. I think I just got to give kudos to our viewers here. You know, I mean, look, 2020 was awful. Everyone knows it. It was nothing great. These Friday evenings have really helped me get through 2020. Being a part of it has been a huge honor. But obviously, we made it. Look, we get 13 days left. We're here. It's right around the corner, and we don't have this show without our viewers. They are a large part of this. They sacrifice 2 hours of their Friday evening to listen to us banter about sports, and honestly, we just can't appreciate it enough. I certainly appreciate it, and I can't think of a better way to go out in 2020 than to just thank these great people. And we will see you guys after the new year.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it really has been fantastic. A great year, obviously, for those past and present on this show. We started off with myself, Nick Partain, and we conclude the year on StreamYard. We also conclude with fantastic graphics as well. We started off, I remember, coming back from Las Vegas almost actually a year ago today. We were just there, and starting off this year to just come back, and we had in our studio here, we had a couple of cameras, we had a couple of lights on a square table, and one little mixer and whatever, and now we have grown so far where we now have solid graphics. We have partners now, Black Cats NYC, Minutes to Bell Time, Pro Wrestling Pick'em, Nawa Wrestling, FA Euro New York. Plenty of partners that have decided to join in with us, and we really do appreciate it here at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group. My kudos, and I know that's exactly what Ian Schraier has been waiting for a long time. gentlemen, my kudos is also a combination and a crossover of what grinds my gears, ladies and gentlemen. So now that we've got that set to go, my kudos is a little bit of the following. So just a few days ago, on December 17th, oh wait, that was yesterday actually. So December 17th, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson, talks to the media and speaks to a certain journalist. He was asked a question, quote, "Over the past few weeks, we've asked you a few times about wide receiver Travis Fulgham, but the playing time has declined to the point where it doesn't seem like a rotation with him anymore. What's the reason why he's not on the field that often, and what needs to be done to get him on there?" So for those fans that are listening out there, here is the Dougie bomb, if you will. Coach Peterson says, quote, "Now get this, folks. I mean, listen, you guys ask me a lot of questions about running back rotations. Where did that come into play? Have no idea. Receiver rotations. Who's our right tackle? Well, I mean, Lane Johnson is hurt, so that's a valid question. Who's our left tackle? Well, Jason Peters is he has a dangling toe. Also, Andre Dillard also blew out his ACL in the beginning of the year, and all that stuff. And we still plan for Travis. We still game plan for Travis. I'll tell you this. This is where it gets good. Alshon Jeffrey is getting healthier and is playing better, and we game plan for him. There are certain plays, specific plays that Travis is going to be on, and there's specific plays that Alshon is going to be in on." There's more to the quote, but I have to stop there before I burst out this microphone and my mixer that is currently going on here. Let's see. What is the best word? What? Now, I want to say this. Alshon Jeffrey is making $20 million a year. You know he's not going to be back next year. That was a massive, massive failure. And we all know that 1 year he was a flash in the pan, 1 year wonder. That's all he was. And that was a part of the Super Bowl. Okay. And Travis Fulgham is a young and up and coming player, wide receiver that you can also get for on the cheap. Not only that, if you don't think that you're going to be around next year, you would do something stupid like this. You would also be doing something along those lines of not giving the younger player time when you are sitting currently at 3-8-1. Now you're 4-8-1, and you actually have a shot at the division. Good Lord help you for saying to yourself and to the rest of your coaching staff, well, we're going to play Alshon Jeffrey. Granted, he did get a touchdown last week, and that was fantastic news. Great stuff. Big whoop. Big whoop. And now they're 4-8-1, and now they actually have a shot at winning the division. Next year, the Eagles were, before the pandemic, $60 million over the salary cap. Now, most likely, the Philadelphia Eagles will be even more over the salary cap. You figure, let's say, $100 million. Well, you would think that Alshon Jeffrey would be a cap casualty. Why are you even playing him? He's oft injured, and you're now messing around with the rotation that could potentially, you can have a player like Travis Fulgham be signed to a lucrative, cheap deal because he was on a practice squad of the Indianapolis Colts the year before, and yet we're still giving this guy a chance when last year he played all of 3 games, and this year he's played all of about 6 games. Okay, great. That guy's not going to be there next year. No doubt about it. There will be cap casualties, and I hate to say it, it's going to be big-name guys, Alshon being one of them. He's been oft injured, and I can't keep saying this enough. You need to look ahead to next year regardless of what your record is. Yeah, okay, guess what? You're 4-8-1. Could you win the division? Yeah, you can, but you know you're going to get destroyed, demolished in round number 1, in the wild card round. That is my kudos because Doug Peterson had the guts to actually tell the Philadelphia media, who are scoundrels to begin with, just like New York media. They will never let this go. As they know, just like Philadelphia fans, they're insane. They hear this, they want Dougie out of town so fast. Kudos to you, Doug Peterson, for most likely jettisoning yourself out of Philadelphia faster than anyone can see. Anything you want to add to that, Ian? Because I see you're sitting there listening, and just does anyone agree or disagree with me? I have to be honest here. How you have to have serious guts to really say that to the media.
Well, I think between that and the 35 or however many millions of dollars, it's in fact going to be 60 with the signing bonus and everything included, that Carson Wentz is going to be on the roster potentially in 2021, even though they haven't given up on him. If Jalen Hurts continues off his great start last week to be a backup at a price tag of $60 million, which is outrageous. Pun intended, that my gears were just grinding listening to you. And look, I think you said it perfectly, but I also think that the cards are lining up the right way right now, with Dwayne Haskins starting this week for Washington against Seattle. The Giants defense is completely not the defense, but the secondary is decimated by injury right now, with Bradbury on the COVID list. Darnay Holmes is still out, so they're down 2 key cornerbacks this weekend against the Browns, and the Eagles are just right there ready to grasp that NFC East right back. So if Jalen Hurts can go out there, and I think a lot's going to determine on how they do this weekend in Arizona. Who knows? Maybe Doug Peterson might be there for 2021 after all.
Oh, good Lord. And you know what? he has a reaction just like that.
Winning in playoffs solve everything, Joey.
That is very true.
They do.
That is very true. You're 100% right. But guess what? This team is going legitimately nowhere. Let's finish off this here with a few credits that we have to give here. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a giveaway that is going on currently right now within the Eastern Observer and Blackjack Media Group. So in courtesy of our good friend Al Carl, the host of the Essential Wrestling Podcast, Sidelines Memorabilia Shop in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, a good friend of Al Carl, has decided to give a few of his wrestling memorabilia away to us, and a little bit of a partnership, and we really do appreciate it, guys, out at Sidelines, because you can win a Jim the Anvil Neidhart 8x11 signed photo. Here is how to do it. Search I-95 Sports Network on YouTube. Join our channel by clicking the word subscribe, and be sure to click the little bell icon on your notifications. And also, while you're watching the live show on Tuesday night, comment and add the hashtag EWPAnvil. So good stuff there from Al Carl and from the guys at the Essential Wrestling Podcast. So let's keep it moving here in terms of our credits here. Tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, our good friend and our lead Minnesota Vikings writer, Anthony Tornatore. I don't know where the hell he came up with Tony T from. Listen, Anthony Tornatore, you are Tony the Tiger in my eyes now. Okay? That's it. Anthony Tornatore, ladies and gentlemen, will be on Fight TV pay-per-view. Tickets available right now at Ticketmaster.com. Coming to you live tomorrow night. Doors open at 5. Start time is at 7 p.m. Daytona Beach Ocean Center is the NAWA, North American Wrestling Alliance Jingle Brawl. Tony T or Anthony Tornatore will be on the call for that on Fight TV. For more information, please log on to theeasternobserver.com. Also, on next Tuesday is going to be the Essential Wrestling Podcast, episode number 33, with Al Carl, Ryan Joy, John Smith, John Diaconti. Also, Gary Mehefe as well will be back with more wrestling on Tuesday, December 22nd, starting at 6 p.m. on all of the following platforms that you can see on the bottom. And also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio as well. Perfect segue, as we actually did not have time to make a brand new graphic, but the Essential Wrestling Podcast as well as the Primetime Rundown were just approved on iHeartRadio. So really cool stuff. So if you are listening to us on iHeartRadio, we thank you very much, because if it was not for you, as Rob DeLuca said earlier, we would not be on these platforms. Really, really amazing stuff. Also, finally, to round this out, the Daily Wrestling News Show comes to you live every Monday through Thursday. Next week is Christmas Eve. We don't know if we're going to get a live show on Christmas Eve. If Ryan Joy feels up to it, he might be doing that, but we'll see. The Daily Wrestling News Show comes to you live Monday through Thursday, starting at 10 p.m. every single day, right here on the Eastern Observer. The show is presented to you by Pro Wrestling Pick'em and by Minutes to Bell Time as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, for one final time here in the calendar year of 2020, it is time for us to get some rest and to get ready for the brand new year, hopefully COVID-free. For Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, myself, Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group, we'll see you in 2021.